Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Today, we address a report from something called Pretty Ricky about a J.J. McCarthy holdout.
I'm Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings, and Shad Khan just sent me Pretty Ricky's left toe.
Hey, this is Arif Hasan of the Wide Left Substack. Luke Inman's computer is minus 300 to blow up during the show.
Too soon, dude. Don't make those jokes yet, all right? We're 5 minutes in, not even. Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. Minnesota Twins are on fire. I wonder what it's like to actually watch a game on TV nowadays. How cool would that be?
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Arif Hasan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talks Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
It's a brand new week here on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Welcome to the Minnesota Football Party. Endless Vikings talk, local experts. Let's do it for the next 45 minutes or so. I'm Sam Ekstrom. You met Luke Braun, Luke Inman, and Arif Hasan. And for a June 17th, we've actually got some storylines to talk about on today's show. Some kind of interesting ones.
We found a couple after a long search.
I searched Minnesota
technically
Vikings
these are
news
storylines.
on Google and got these results. The Vikings get nothing in the Kirk Cousins tampering resolution.
Who could have seen this coming?
We will yell at Mike Florio. We will rip Mike Florio for getting people worked up over this. J.J. McCarthy holdout, alarm, or nothing to be concerned with. And also later in the show, quite excited for this, we will try to rank the top Vikings rookie seasons in team history. We're going to do a lot of rank 'em segments over the next month, and this will be the first of many to come. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and they have a great new deal at FanDuel right now. They have juiced the pot a little bit. You can get $200 in bonus bets, not $150, $200 in bonus bets if you're a new customer with any winning $5 bet. $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. FanDuel.com/locked on right now to get started before the NBA Finals are over. Welcome, gentlemen. Hope you had a good weekend. Hope you had a good Father's Day weekend. It's time to talk about the Kirk Cousins tampering resolution, because I think there was a moment in time where people thought the Vikings were going to get an extra first-round pick. Like, they're going to get number 8, they're going to get number 11. It's going to be unbelievable.
Don't come crying to me.
And maybe that's not the story. Maybe the story is the slap on the wrist that the Falcons got. So the Falcons, for tampering with Kirk Cousins and others, not just Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, I think, was included, they surrender a 5th-round pick and money. So basically nothing. The Vikings get nothing in return. Now, I know there was talk about the Vikings not reporting the Falcons, like they needed to file a formal complaint, and they didn't do that. People were thinking, well, the Eagles got a 3rd-round pick, or switched 3rd-round picks with
thirds. It's a huge difference.
There is a difference. You're right about that. Although the way those teams performed the previous year, I think there was a 30-pick difference in those picks. But there was precedent that the Vikings could get something, and they didn't get anything. So, we'll start with Inman. What happened here? Is this like the punishment is so small, the Vikings got nothing? What's going on with the tampering resolution?
Honestly, I remember 2-3 weeks before the draft is when this all really got ramped up. Thick of mock draft season, everybody kind of was holding on to what turned out to be some false hope that, like, oh my gosh, how great would it be if Kwesi got this kind of extra free pick? But I will say, the more and more we came on this show and talked about these tampering cases, what they've looked like in the past, the more I think we came kind of to a conclusion as a group, especially I know Luke, Braun, and Arif were leading the charge, kind of came to the realization that it was going to be a long shot no matter what. The Vikings actually like made out ahead in all this. Like, sure, Falcons may lose a pick or two, but are the Vikings getting those picks? Probably not. So not really surprised by the verdict much, to be honest here, Sam. I think this is kind of what we all expected for the most part. And I know some people, I'm thinking back to draft time, were really holding on to the idea that maybe Kwesi was trading away so much 2025 ammo because he maybe knew something about the case. He knew he was going to get some sort of kickback from this, but obviously not the case, guys.
Okay,
That's great.
So
this whole thing is so funny. Oh my god.
Spiraling in cope. That's so funny.
hey, that's draft season, though. That's the thick draft season.
Kwesi thought he was going to get a first. That's why he did everything the way he did it.
What a genius. What a master stroke. Well played, sir.
We Nancy Drew'd it. We figured him out.
The Hardy Boys.
Can we come back to reality finally?
The Hardy
Can we
Boys.
please?
Kwesi didn't file a complaint in the
absolutely not.
complaint box. He didn't send Goodell the little notation that said, "Hey, Roger."
Wasn't he asked about this specifically? It was either right before the draft or right after the draft. He said, "Well, I have no idea. I've been too busy. I haven't even been paid."
He like
Yeah,
super
we've
obviously didn't care.
Yeah,
he was
so
not
we've been
even.
keeping
And
our
that kind
hands
of that
clean of this.
alone, when he said that in his presser, that alone kind of deflated a lot of people's notion that this is really kind of a moving thing in the background right now. And even though we don't know a lot of details, Kwesi's probably doing some digging and doing everything he can to get these extra picks. That's why he's trading all these future picks. Not the case at all. And I think he kind of, put that to bed with that statement alone in that presser. Whenever that was, it was either right before the draft or right after.
I think it was right before the draft. Either way, okay. I mean, it was very clear the level of disinterest the Vikings had in that.
He didn't care.
So there's like a couple of things that are relevant here, right? And I want to address something that Nubelax put in the comments, that it was multiple players. So the NFL investigation on the thing, on the tampering, revealed a couple of factors that kind of mitigated the penalty relative to other instances of tampering. I mean, remember, like, the Dolphins lost like a first-round pick, right?
Yeah, they pissed off the owners specifically, and they got the book thrown at them.
Yeah, so
they messed with Brady. You can't mess with Brady.
Yeah,
he's
like that. There was an ownership dispute in that. So,
right. So yeah,
it got personal.
One, there was an ownership dispute in that. It got personal. Yeah. Two, I think that it's a lot different when it's like at least. And the way the NFL seemed to talk about it to Mike Florio, sorry, that's just funny to me. They
always tell the truth.
They wouldn't even pick up the phone, right? Like, he wanted to get a statement, and they were like, no. And he's like, can I email some questions? And they were like, fine. Like, that's what happened. So one of the essential differences is that it wasn't a member of, like, the executive team or the front office that talked to Kirk Cousins. It was like the athletic trainer, and that's all their investigation could reveal after they turned over phone records and stuff like that. The second thing is that it was like during the legal tampering period, which I guess diminishes the punishment a little bit, which it shouldn't, because that's the whole point of the way that tampering period plays out, right? It's different, but okay. And that technically doesn't match precedent, but it does like diminish the impact of that. The third thing is that with the multiple players, so Kirk Cousins mentioned that he reached out to like Darnell Mooney and like one other player, and there was no evidence that the team directed him to do that, which is why that was not part of the tampering investigation. It just seems pretty small because the impact, according to the NFL, was relatively small. It didn't really change negotiations for one team or the other, and it seemed to be not part of the negotiations at all. Really, it was more, according to the NFL, just reaching out to the athletic trainer moments before signing, after terms had been agreed to, right? And I think that's another part of it, is that the terms had already been agreed to when the impermissible contact occurred. If terms had not been agreed to yet, then the punishment would have been different on top of that.
Yeah, slap on the wrist NFL feels very appropriate to me. Like, I've seen a lot of people be like, well, what's to stop every team from tampering if this is all you get? And like, yeah, welcome to the combine. Yeah. That happens.
You
it's
can't,
true, yeah.
you can't draw too hard of a line, because then if you dig into everybody, then you're just giving everyone, you're taking every first round pick away. Okay, let's just start with the second round because everybody lost.
Yeah, Jonathan Grenard agreed to terms with the Vikings in like an hour. You think that contract got hammered out? Come on now.
And they are certainly not digging into, honestly, where the real tampering probably occurred, which was at the combine. Like, the NFL chose to investigate what was stated publicly by Kirk, which was he had contact with the trainer. We all know, like, the obvious secret is that there was more than that. Like, the real tampering probably happened weeks prior, and that part, I'm guessing, was not taken into account with the punishment that was doled out.
Yeah, that's a different incident.
Yeah. But aside, I mean, the Vikings not getting a kickback aside, it does feel like kind of an open invitation to say, hey, we're cool. We're cool if you want to do a little tampering. It's fine. Yeah.
Everyone already knows.
Yeah.
If you're just now realizing this, you're just catching up. It's not news.
Yeah, it is. And you've laid out a good reason why, the Dolphins lose a first and the Eagles and Cardinals swap thirds. The precedent does feel like it's all over the map, though. Like when you've got first round picks being taken, thirds being switched.
It honestly isn't that shocking to me because, with the Eagles and Cardinals, it materially impacted the ability of the Eagles to do what they wanted to do. This did not impact the Vikings at all. Terms had already been agreed to with the Falcons, right? Like, that's why I think, like, it was a little bit, like, it feels like the precedent's all over the map, but I think the NFL is basically saying, like, we understand what the game is during the legal tampering window. That's all that this means to me. And it's not as if the Eagles and Cardinals were in that same situation. There is no legal tampering window for coaches, right? So I think I don't think that the precedent's really all over the map. It just feels inconsistent. I don't think it actually is all that inconsistent.
There's one thing I want to push back on too, which is the idea that like a 5th round pick is nothing. Like, it's small, but it's not nothing. And like, I'm going to go back and find what everybody said about Kari Vedvik when the Vikings blew a 5th round pick on him. Like, wasting a 5th round pick sucks. Yeah. Like that's not.
It's a Ty Chandler.
I mean, yeah, it's not going to change the outlook of your franchise, and it probably shouldn't just because your athletic trainer made a call 24 hours before he was supposed to. But like, it's people are acting as though the Falcons are getting off with absolutely nothing. It's like, no, a 5th round pick like counts and matters.
After having like committed murder, apparently, are the Vikings that upset? No. Why would Vikings fans be upset? The only reason Vikings fans, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, are upset is because they were led to believe that they would get something out of this, which wasn't going to happen without the Vikings filing a dispute.
Yeah.
Examine whose fault that is. If you were lied to
from the get-go. That was
right.
Just go back through your collection of information and examine whose fault it is.
It was fun because we were 2 weeks before the draft. It was the thick of mock draft season. Are we going to move up? What kind of ammo do we need? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, how great would that be? Oh, my God, the stars are aligning. Look at this.
The bigger issue here.
Very unrealistic from the get-go.
The bigger issue here is nothing to do with NFL rules and more to do with the Falcons did something wrong to get Kirk Cousins that the Vikings didn't do, and that sucks. But it's not within the NFL rules what they did wrong. What they did wrong was they lied to Kirk Cousins by omission, essentially, by telling him that he was going to be the quarterback, right? That Kirk Cousins wanted the security very obviously in going to a team that was not drafting a rookie quarterback. The Vikings told the truth to him and got burned. The Falcons did not, and they got Kirk Cousins. And that is not something that's governed by the NFL rulebook. That's what happened. That's why the Vikings lost. It's not because after the Falcons and Kirk Cousins agreed to terms that he talked to the athletic trainer. There's no competitive disadvantage in the negotiations, which is why the punishment was relatively small. The real issue, the reason the Vikings lost the negotiations, is because they told the truth and the Falcons didn't. That's why.
Yeah. And I reiterate, the Vikings were not going to. I don't think they were going to pay that contract that the Falcons did. The Falcons guaranteed more money to Kirk Cousins than the Vikings were willing to.
Yeah, no chance.
Yeah,
Correct.
and also, Nubelax, you keep on bringing up the idea that it was 3 players, but, like, there's no evidence that those other players were contacted by the Falcons before that they were allowed to, or that Kirk Cousins was directed to contact those players on behalf of the team. Players recruit players all the time. That's very normal. They just cannot do it after a team has directed them to do it. That's it.
So Mike Florio got people excited about this. Turned out to be nothing. And coming up next, we'll talk about more unimpeachable reporting from a source that says J.J. McCarthy could be holding out. That's next on the Minnesota.
The guy Mike Florio wishes he was.
FanDuel brings us today's show, and they've got a great new deal right now that you got to check out if you're a new customer. And you want to bet Game 5, likely the last game of the NBA Finals, you can do it at FanDuel with $200 in bonus bets in your pocket. All you need to do is win a $5 bet. So go find a juicy minus 2,000 money line, get 10 cents on your $5 bet, and then you've got 200. That's how I would operate. With those $200, you can do futures, Finals MVP, Stanley Cup is still happening. MLB is in full swing, almost at the halfway point. FanDuel.com/locked-on. Add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook.
Not a reverse sweep believer, Sam?
The reverse sweep?
Well,
Let's go for the long shot. Yeah.
Come
It's
on.
never
Have some fun.
happened in NBA history. NHL, I'm holding out a little bit of hope because I think Edmonton's good, but
You don't think Dallas is good?
Dallas is.
I've seen them be
Two
good.
Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
I saw Dallas be good for 5 games against a team that I like.
4 games. I get it. I get what you say, though. I get it. Technicality, like the Falcons tampering.
Speaking of technicalities and fine print and contracts, I don't know where we're not talking about contracts at all, but JJ McCarthy is allegedly, according to Pretty Ricky, who has a surprising track
Beautiful
record.
Richard.
A surprising
Okay.
track record.
Can we talk about
yeah.
the surprising track record? We
Sure.
only count
Yes.
the hits, man. No
Yes.
one ever counts the misses. I've seen, and this is not to say
He missed a
Pretty
bunch in the
Ricky's-
draft, but
that doesn't shock
Yeah.
me. I
yeah,
don't actually
he just
know.
went too
So
hard.
there's like a ton of like these accounts where for like a couple of months they have this amazing track record, and then you look at their tweets over those couple of months, and no, they don't. People just retweet the stuff after the fact.
Sure.
Oh my God, this guy got it 22 hours before the news actually broke. I don't know Pretty Ricky's track record. He could be right all the time. I just have no idea. So I wanted to push back against the track record thing. He got like 3 things, which is good, but if he shot 40 times, that's actually bad.
Right.
Yeah, he's had, like, he's been faster to have news and be right. But yeah, I guess I don't know about the misses. But what he is reporting isn't that weird. I think he's sensationalizing a little bit, which I guess that's the game now. But essentially, with rookie contracts, which are like basically all pre-negotiated, like the guarantee amount is all fully guaranteed. The actual dollar amount is all
rookie wage
scaled.
scale.
Rookie wage scale, all
set in
that.
stone. Yeah.
There are 2 things that typically get negotiated with rookies in these that are like where there's room for wiggle room. One is offset language. You might remember that from the Roquan Smith debacle a few years ago, where if the player does get cut in the middle of the contract, who picks up the guarantees, his old team or the new team that signs him later. You can argue over that a little bit because if you don't have, or if you do have that offset language, it can affect like your free agency chances. And then the second thing is the payout structure of the signing bonus. It's not the amount of the signing bonus or the cap hit of the signing bonus. It's literally like when the checks are written and delivered. And apparently this is according to Joel Corey, who wrote about this last year when Bryce Young was basically having a similar dispute. It's more common now. It's becoming more common for top 10 picks and quarterbacks to request their signing bonus be paid out in a full lump sum right up front, whereas it's usually customary to get it in like 2 to 4 installments. This is an incredibly minor thing.
So minor.
It has no impact on the cap or the salary or anything like that, but that would be the thing. And most of the first round quarterbacks of the last few years have gotten that lump sum. So it wouldn't really be that weird at all for JJ McCarthy to request the same thing, not to like threaten a holdout over it or whatever, which, to be clear, he didn't threaten a holdout. It leaked through a source that is not like officially recognized by the systems of NFL media. But to hold out over that would be a pretty extreme thing that probably, I mean, this almost never even makes it to training camp, this kind of dispute. Even Trey Lance had a very similar thing with his. You might have remembered that in the news. Even they signed it the day before camp. So it's still like 99% likely that JJ McCarthy just signs his rookie deal before camp and we never talk about this again, mercifully.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think the rookie holdouts that we're familiar with are essentially two things: how fully guaranteed their salary is, and whether or not that salary is offsets, right? And the offset distinction could, if it plays out, be worth tens of millions of dollars. There's a reason that you fight for offsets. I mean, this is like being able to invest your money a couple.
It's like months of dividends.
Early.
Yeah,
right. I want that extra. Yeah, I want that extra 3 months of interest on this. Okay.
Yeah, it's apparently become more common since the 2020 CBA, which I don't fully understand why, like what changed in that, but apparently that's kind of.
Let me ask you this, because you flung out a couple good examples: Roquan, Trey Lance, whatnot. Bryce Young last year. So it sounds like there is a trend. More quarterbacks, especially top 10 quarterbacks, are doing this. But has anybody actually held out into training camp? Did Bryce Young hold out into training camp?
Roquan, and I don't know if I can remember.
Had to be a while
one.
ago, right? Roquan.
Yeah, it was 2018.
Roquan was a while ago. Yeah,
6 years ago. 6 years. Okay. Just curious.
Pretty rare.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again,
it never happens. Don't worry about it.
Just to reiterate, too, again, with the rookie wage scale and all this stuff that's already set up with the players' union, 96% of these contracts are already set in stone. We're talking about a very minute part of this. And again, when you said most of the time it's spread out over 2, 3, 4 payments, were you talking about 2, 3, 4 years? Or is sometimes that kind of escalated a little bit, or accelerated, I should say, and you get those 2 or 3, 4 payments within a year or 2 years? Does anybody know? I'm just curious.
I'm pretty confident it's over the course of the first year, maybe even within the first 6 months of the first year. Like it's not, you don't miss out on a year of the money that you're owed.
Makes it even
I want to say there's like a
minuscule,
tax reason to like split it up, but
got it.
I mean,
yeah,
maybe
I don't know.
Pretty esoteric. I wouldn't be able to.
So basically what I've heard here is that there is league-wide precedent for this. It's a reasonable request. Also, the Vikings allegedly haven't done it before, so there's not team precedent for it.
Because they haven't had a top 10 pick or a first-round quarterback since Teddy Bridgewater.
Yes. And as someone pointed out on Twitter too, like the Vikings are doing new things like all the time, like as contracts evolve, as the league evolves. They gave Kirk Cousins a fully guaranteed deal, right? No one had ever done that before. So it's not as if the Vikings are opposed to this. And probably the better wording of this report is JJ McCarthy is not signed yet. Here's why. And I think training camp starts the last week of July. I don't know if it gets done in the next month. It sounds like he's hanging out in Minnesota. Maybe they'll work something out. Odds are, the way the Vikings operate, this gets done in those days during or before the ramp-up period. I would guess probably late July.
Nubalax got it. Witherspoon did hold out last year for the Seahawks. He missed 2 whole practices.
Thank you. Yeah.
Apocalyptic. And clearly his rookie season suffered for that.
Mm-hmm.
Who is J.J. McCarthy's agent? Do we know off the top?
I can look it up.
The piece that you linked us before the show suggested it was actually Joel Corey, the guy who wrote the article about the scheduled payments.
Okay, that sounds familiar. And I wonder if there's any overlap in the agent or the agency and who holds out, because this has to be mostly agent driven, right? Like, it's JJ McCarthy
for sure.
Really, yeah,
it always is. Yeah, JJ McCarthy's lifting weights. He doesn't care about this.
Yeah. I also get the sense that JJ McCarthy is not going to want to cause a ruckus or stir, and I don't think the Vikings would want that either. Like, I think that it's mutually beneficial to not have your top 10 pick missing any time whatsoever when it's like a super key development period in training camp. It's just a terrible look for both sides. So there's a lot of
neither team wants to. Oh,
it's
was that worthy of a buzzer?
CAA
Yeah.
Brian Iralt, same guy as Justin Jefferson. So he's just Mr. Holdout.
oh, okay.
Guy hates the Vikings. He's
just
gonna
hates
every
the Vikings,
player
personally.
he represents is gonna hold out. Kwesi lost
Another
control of the locker room.
JJ. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, neither side wants to come out looking like a villain, right? So they'll come to a resolution.
There'll be a happy media.
Relatively
Kwesi always says it when it comes to most of these contracts. Most of the action usually happens in the 24th, 25th hour. That's when a lot of these deals get done. So week before training camp, something like that. Until then, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing.
When we return, we name the greatest rookie seasons in Vikings history. That's next on the Minnesota Football Party.
This is Minnesota Sports Rankum, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, and it starts now.
Time for the unmatched adrenaline of the Minnesota Sports Rankum segment. People talk about it all over the country. And it's all because of that open music. That really is what does it for me. Also a reminder, please subscribe if you like the show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Hammer that subscribe button. Find our audio, the Locked On Vikings podcast feed, where Luke Braun posts excellent, in-depth Vikings content 5 days a week. We're going to do this ranking throughout the month because it's the dog days. And I'd like to start with greatest rookie seasons in Vikings history. I think it comes down to three guys. Let's first, though, begin with any honorable mentions you might have, because this is actually kind of fun. I filtered my stat head search based on AV, so approximate value, your rookie year for the Vikings. And by far the funniest result. Oh, and my filter was it had to be an AV of 8 or higher, which is a pretty low mark. And there were like 20, 25 guys that met that. The funniest result by far, Ben Gideon.
Let's go.
Come on.
Ben
Gideon.
Gideon.
Starting middle linebacker.
I am vindicated.
Starting middle linebacker for what?
2017
games. 15
somehow
16
had
games?
an AV of 8 with 37 tackles, 9 starts. Was it special
That's
teams
it?
impact? I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know how
Well,
he
I mean,
did it.
got in.
Game
approximate
snaps
value. So, like, one of the reasons people stopped using approximate value, which is not to say it was a bad filter for the purposes of the segment, is because it incorporates stuff like team performance. So, Ben Gideon played on a
not a good
defense
team.
that was remarkable, and so he got a good chunk of the approximate value that gets doled out for having a top performing defense. It's
I think
very crude statistic.
Yeah, I think it also overvalues linebackers because linebackers tend to get named in the tackle very often, even if they didn't do the lion's share of the work. Like if somebody else, did a great job and funneled it back, and they're the guy that did the cleanup or whatever. So
I think it
that all makes sense,
overvalues.
but
I think it overvalues games played as well. Like Garrett Bradbury.
yeah, so you get
also
offensive
had an
linemen. Yeah, basically
Right,
any
well,
offensive lineman
offensive-
that starts for a long
He'll
time
load
will
all.
get high AV. Yeah.
Yeah, so offensive linemen with a lot of starts that play on teams that have good offenses. Generally, like it's for offensive linemen, it's starts, team performance, and postseason honors. So if you got
Interesting. Okay.
Rookie of the Year or Pro Bowl awards, those are
So
basically
if you just
the only
start
inputs.
all 16 games on a really good offense, your AV is going to be at least
if you're
solid,
offensive
at least
lineman.
decent.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So Gideon started 9 games. Who started the other 6-7 games there?
I
Brink?
mean, Gideon was a
Jasper?
sub-package linebacker.
So that was
it
that
was
just
just
means that they
yeah.
used 3
Mackenzie
linebackers
Alexander is
to
the
start
answer.
in 9 games. Yeah, he
Make
was
it
there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm really curious to hear your 3 because I think there is like a very clear 4.
Okay.
Well, I have a 4 as well, but it's probably not the 4 that you're thinking of. This is my opportunity to again talk about the legend of Don Holtz. Don Holtz in 1963 had arguably the best rookie season no one's ever heard of, and then was part of the worst trade that no one's ever heard of. In 1963, he was an undrafted free agent for the Minnesota Vikings. He proceeded to get 10.5 sacks, 9 fumble recoveries, and a pick 6 in his rookie year. He was then traded in a 6-player deal to the Eagles for Ted Dean and Bob Berry. Ted Dean proceeded to have 5 carries and 30 yards for the rest of his career, and then was done forever.
6 yards per.
Yeah, 6-yard average.
for him, man.
Bob Berry, a backup quarterback, went 0 for 1 or
Bobby
0 and 1, 16 of 46, 1 touchdown, 5 picks.
I feel like Sam hasn't slept in about 72 hours after that.
Right.
He's reading it like a
This is
book report
personal.
in 5th grade right now in front of the class right now. That was, that's unbelievable. That is
Step
not.
aside, Herschel.
Step aside.
Can you imagine? Think about that trade.
Stump
Now-
the Schwab.
Okay, hold on. 10.5 sacks, 9 fumble recoveries.
Yes.
Goodness.
What?
That's an NFL record.
What?
I think that might have been Jim Finks's first major transaction as GM of the Vikings.
Oh no!
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Hey, he came around, but or that might have been a late Burt Rose move. I don't know when in the calendar that happened, but Burt Rose, not a GM, PR guy that just kind of stumbled into the job when the Vikings first started.
in the corporate meetings.
Yeah, just kind of was pals with Max Winter, and it's all right.
Hilarious. That's hilarious.
10.5 sacks. Goodness.
insane?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
tough to
so-
follow there, Sam. I got so what are we doing? Top 3? I got
Braun-
honorable
yeah.
mention for 4, but it's tied. It's 4 and 4A. Percy and Chuck Foreman. Both of them won the Rookie of the Year.
Oh, Percy's good. Yeah.
Percy
Yeah,
over
Percy's good.
2,000 all-purpose yards. What's hilarious? Do you know Percy's only to this day 36 years old right now? I feel like he was Deebo Samuel before Deebo Samuel. Put it that way for people maybe a little bit too young watching Percy back in the day. Him and the connection with Favre right out the gate was just so fun and magical. But yeah, Percy, an honorable mention. And then I have Chuck Foreman tied with him as well. Also Rookie of the Year, over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, 6 TDs. Yeah, I don't think we need to go in depth about Chuck Foreman's career, but those are my 2 honorable mentions. Kind of
Was that Braun? Was that your clear 4?
Yeah, was Foreman, because Rookie of the Year, and then just the impact that he had beyond just piling up statistics and making the Pro Bowl as a rookie. That offense was super one-dimensional the year before, and it's part of why they couldn't make the playoffs. Even though Fran Tarkenton was back, they still had the Purple People Eaters, John Gilliam, and going crazy. Having that sort of outlet, that check down that could be a threat on his own, stopped defenses from being able to just cap everything over the top, and actually made them come up and play a little bit, and then you could hit John Gilliam over the top and everything exploded, and then they went to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row.
Yeah, 73 catches in 1975. So, and I think he got some MVP votes
He was
or notoriety.
top 5 in
at least?
MVP.
Yeah.
Yeah, top 5 MVP candidate for 74 and 75.
It also allowed Minnesota sports writers to claim that the Vikings invented the West Coast offense before Bill Walsh did.
That Chuck Foreman himself said that on Locked On Vikings a few years ago.
No, I know. It's always funny because it's a very local sports kind of
The pop gun offense. That's what they would call it.
Mike Zimmer invented the double A gap. He'll let you know about it.
I don't think he would. I don't think he would say he invented it.
Oh, he would. He would.
No,
and
he
has.
wouldn't. He would say he perfected it for sure.
So, Braun, is that your number 4, or is he in the mix for number 1, or is he? Are you putting him pretty clearly number 4?
I'm struggling with how to rank all of them, but I do think that there's the top 3 we're all thinking of, and then Foreman, and then Percy Harvin's would be there, but it's hard when you got hurt in your rookie year.
Percy, he got hurt his rookie year. Did he?
Yeah, he missed half the season, didn't he?
No. No, not in 09.
Percy?
No.
Oh my God, I'm
don't
thinking
think so.
2012. Never mind. I was thinking of his MVP candidate year. My
He
bad.
played 15
Yeah, I know.
games, so
Yeah.
maybe missed 1 game. But Percy's rookie year had there's 4 moments that stand out.
Dude, the Packer game, 3 Packers collide.
The bowling
each
pins.
Other, the bowling.
Yeah. Yep.
Percy. That's the first one for me. Yeah.
The kickoff return against Pittsburgh where the ref got mauled by Jeff Dugan maybe, and the kickoff return against San Francisco in the Favre Lewis game, and then there was a play against Detroit where he just bounced off of 2 tacklers who were leveling him.
Debo before Debo, man.
Repelled.
So fun.
Yeah. I can't put Percy up there just because the total impact was at least in 2009 was relatively minor. I know he had 2,000 all-purpose yards, but all-purpose yards are, I think, not a great stat because you rack up a ton, at least in the before times, as a kick return.
Right.
Yeah, you get 20 yards as a bad kickoff.
Right, but even cut it in half. I don't know what his return yards were. Even cut it in half. Did he eclipse 1,000 receiving? Did he come close?
No,
rushing and
Percy,
receiving?
920.
Percy famously never got 1,000 receiving.
Rushing
that was
and receiving?
one of the
closer.
Yeah, rushing and receiving, he got 925, yards from scrimmage.
Right. But I hear you. Yeah, I mean, you had Sidney Rice, Shanko. I mean, there's so many weapons on that team. I get it. AP, obviously.
Percy, I don't want to hate on Percy too much. He's one of my favorite players ever to watch. So.
Okay, so top 3 is where the debate really gets going. So who would be your number 3 of, I think, the obvious 3: Peterson, Jefferson, Moss?
Yeah, I got JJ and AP so close. I got JJ at 3 though, AP at 2. So close. You can make a case for either one. Today it's JJ at 3, AP at 2. That's what
I'm with you.
I have to put JJ at 3 as well. As a running back hater, I have to put JJ as 3.
Well, now I want to do it different, just so that we're not unanimous. But
that's where you are, right?
I'll put Chuck Foreman 3rd, just to be different, just to be a hipster.
I'm
actually surprised. I'm surprised at how unanimous we are because AP, number 1, that was a losing team, and so was JJ's team that year. But also AP kind of stunk down the stretch. Remember, he got hurt after the 296. I think he got hurt against Dallas the following week, missed 2 games, and kind of stunk down the stretch as that team faded. But
he averaged 96 rushing yards a game. I don't care.
I was going to say, Sam, I think that
he had already set such an he 2022 Vikings did.
Dude,
he set such a high expectation that just being kind of good down the stretch felt really bad.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was going to say. It speaks volumes for what he did before he quote unquote stunk, because that's how insane it was up to that point. But I hear what you're saying.
He had a 224 and 3 touchdown game plus a 70-yard kickoff return that
Chicago.
People forget because he had the
won
296
that Chicago game single-handedly. He won that Chicago game.
Yeah.
Without him returning it to in overtime or maybe it was fourth quarter clock winding down, but without him returning it to midfield and the Vikings just need 8 yards, they couldn't even convert a first down. And then Ryan Longwell came in and kicked that game-winning field goal. Without him, though, single-handedly won that game in Soldier that day.
The thing that gets me is that he didn't start half the games he played in.
Right, Chester.
He was so good, and then there are games where it's
oh, Chili.
Yeah, man, he got 12 carries, he got 9 carries, Chester's out touching him, and it's can you imagine? Not to dig on Chester Taylor, who's very good, but can you imagine if he had gotten the carries he deserved?
Right.
Which I guess you could make the same argument for Jefferson, right? But
true.
I genuinely
didn't even play the first 2 games, right?
No, he played. He just didn't start.
Oh, he didn't start.
But I genuinely think that the reason Jefferson didn't start made sense, right? It was a lockout year, or not a lockout year.
COVID.
But it was COVID year. That was it.
Yeah.
It
was a little weird.
And he didn't get enough practice in, and so he wasn't as familiar with the it made sense. The Adrian Peterson thing never made any sense at all, and so him not getting he finished the year with 238 carries. You should have had 280. It's crazy.
So remind me. So okay, I remember it all very clearly now. Okay, COVID year. Thielen and Diggs ahead of him those first 2 games. Why did he start game 3 all of a sudden?
Gone.
Okay,
Diggs was gone.
Yeah.
DC Johnson. Yeah. So I think as we know now in hindsight, he got COVID at a critical point in learning playbook stuff, and so he sort of fell behind there. Had a pretty bad camp.
Yep.
And was wide receiver 3 to start the season. And then after a couple of weeks, he got a little more comfortable. He got more run in that third game, that Titans game, where he had the gritty came out and everything went crazy. And then Kirk Cousins said later after that season, I'm really excited about what Justin Jefferson can do. He's going to know the playbook the whole year. He didn't really have it down till like week 8 last year. So the first half of the season was slow. Yeah.
It made sense. I don't think it made sense with Peterson. So that's my argument. I mean, obviously they both had remarkable rookie seasons. I'm taking Peterson's rookie season over Jefferson's because we're deciding between 2 and 3. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, and
BC starting though, huh?
BC, and remember, BC was so bad in week 2 when they got embarrassed against Indy. That they're like, we got to shake it up, we got to do something, and that was that. I mean, he was never going to look back. But They
gave him like a limited package, and they were like, you know these things, we'll just run you on these, and he put up like 200 yards.
I was at all the off-season program that year. I was at the training camp. Jefferson did not earn it. To my eye, based on performance, and it sounds like not knowing the playbook was also a detractor. So it made sense. It weirdly made sense at the time, which is hilarious. So we're all united that it's Jefferson 3, Peterson. Oh no, Braun says Foreman 3.
I'm era adjusting the numbers a little bit too, which I do think is fair.
Fair enough, and we all agree that Randy Moss is number 1. Sounds like
17 touchdowns,
dude.
baby.
It's the 17 touchdowns. That's what it is, man.
He changed football immediately. I mean, the Packers in 1999 went cornerback, cornerback, cornerback. You'll never see a rookie year like that again.
And it didn't work.
Only one of those guys was good, and it was the third guy.
Didn't do anything. Nobody's even come close. I mean, OBJ is tied with like a couple other guys, I think, for 13.
Well, if OBJ played a full season,
that's true.
His yards per game, his yards per game, and then eventually what would have been his like yards per season or yards
sniffed it.
that season would have and Jefferson outproduced Moss in yardage by about 5 yards per game, which is great. I can't overlook the 17 touchdowns or the field-altering effect that Moss had, right? Moss shows up, and we immediately get it. Jefferson, and, maybe this is on me, but I think a lot of us were like, hey, those are pretty good. Like, after he started, we were like, oh, those are pretty good 3 games. We'll see if he's got something, right? And I remember saying stuff like, hey, a lot of the times, these guys, like, bust out, and they have, like, a bunch of good games. He's probably good, but let's not say that because of 3 games he's the best rookie in the NFL. Obviously, by the end of the season, I thought that he was, and that he got screwed out of the Rookie of the Year conversation. But it wasn't obvious, even after he started producing multiple 100-yard games, how good Jefferson was. Moss showed up in camp, changing the game.
Yeah, and it was like, oh no.
and similar to that too, Adrian Peterson. Do you remember that first preseason game? I think it was versus the Jets. Where he just bounced around outside, and again, it's like, okay, a lot of hype in camp and things like that, but let's see him actually put the pads on against a different team. And
that reminds me of
bullied somebody, bulldozed somebody on the sideline instead of just walking out of bounds. You saw the speed and the strength combo, and you just knew. For people who watch football, you just know when somebody's playing at a different level. Moss did that in camp. AP in preseason right out the gate. JJ, you're right. It took maybe a couple games because of a lot of different factors, COVID and what have you. But
right, and which is not to say that Jefferson didn't alter the shape of defenses. Of course he did. But there's a reason it took a little bit of time for defenses to alter their geometry in response to Jefferson versus Moss, where they were like, oh my God. Okay, we have to find a 6'4" safety that runs 4.3, and that might not be enough. Right?
and Moss made such up. Moss made such an impact with fairly unimpressive box scores. Like, okay, 2 catches, 52 yards and a touchdown. But that touchdown was a 40-yard bomb where he outjumped 2 guys and changed the game.
It's the Thanksgiving game. It's like the legacy game, and it was 3 catches.
It's a video game, dude.
And 3 catches broke the whole franchise. Like, they didn't recover from that game for like 10 years.
Right, yeah. It like the most impactful 3-catch game in NFL history.
Ever.
One of them is a screen, by the way. But
because the Cowboys backed off. They were like, we can't let this guy keep beating us deep. We got to put 2 safeties out. It's like, all right, we'll do a bubble screen.
Okay,
he just
we'll
scores
take
off
the 10
that
yards.
anyways.
I did that. The Jets game story does remind me of the story from, and I don't know how true this is, but it feels true, so it is. The freshman year Oklahoma, Adrian Peterson, he starts hitting the hole way too fast. So fast that the blocks hadn't developed yet. And so instead of telling their freshman running back, like, hey, you should like have like a little bit of patience, they're like, okay, you got to line up 3 yards further back at the beginning of the play.
Sounds very
insane,
true.
Dude.
Are you going to tell Adrian Peterson to slow down? That is the I don't even know if he knows what those words mean.
But dude, that spoke volumes about the hype of him coming in as a prospect out of high school too.
Yeah,
like, this guy was just unheard of even in high school.
Well, when you talk to NFL scouts, and people talk about like rookies holding out or like people declaring early in the Marcus Lattimore situation and stuff like that. People have I think Larry Fitzgerald had something. And people talk about like, well, who could have, as a freshman in high school, actually played in the NFL? Because it's not like basketball where LeBron James could maybe show up and have an impact, right? Mm-hmm. And there's like two names that always come up. One is Adrian Peterson, and two is Jadeveon Clowney, which unfortunately we didn't get to see him have the first overall pick type career, although he's still a very good player. But like those are the two names that people will say, but like, hey, as a freshman in college, that guy might have been able to play in the NFL.
Insane, dude. Insane.
Moss, Peterson, Jefferson are unanimous top 3 greatest rookie seasons in Vikings history. And Don Holt's an obvious number 4.
Yeah,
obvious
number 4.
Obviously. Yeah. Those stats are crazy, but I didn't know that.
Kind of
10 and 9.
Yeah, I think last thought, and it's going to be a really
Brooklyn's
quick
finest.
thought. We're out of here in a minute, but I'll just end with this. A surprising lack of defensive rookie seasons, considering the defenders that were on this team earlier on in the franchise's history, that there aren't like contenders.
Well,
Yeah, Bud Grant never played rookies.
Did you say Lewis Seen?
Andrew Booth. All right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you go down the list and it's like
Carl Eller didn't play a lot his first year. Like that's just how Bud Grant did it.
Right, yeah.
Kevin Williams.
Probably because Don Holt was sacking everybody. That's probably why.
Yeah, it was probably, But, like, Carl Eller, I guess Kevin Williams, but, like, there's a bunch of offensive, like, Gary Zimmerman started right away. Fran played 10 or started 10 out of 14 games.
Yeah.
A bunch of the really good, like, a bunch of the really good draft picks of the 80s started in the USFL, too. Like, Anthony Carter, and
there's also a lot of great defenders that did not start with the Vikings either. Jared Allen, Antoine Winfield,
Jim Marshall.
Correct. We got to go. Minnesota Football Party. Please subscribe. Watch us on Mondays and Thursdays. Ron Johnson on Tuesdays. Minnesota Basketball Party on Wednesdays. Lots of great content. Catch the postcasts after Twins games with Luke Inman. Thanks, gentlemen. We'll talk to you next time on the Minnesota Football Party, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota.
Peace.